We're ready. Okay. All right. So today we're going to be talking about compresses and poultices. But before we begin, let's have a word of prayer. Father in heaven, thank you so much again for this day and the opportunity that we have to be here. We ask that you will fill our minds and our hearts and our brains, dear Lord, so that we will understand and we will learn the wonderful natural remedies that you have created for us. For we ask this trusting and believing in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, in the Bible, there is a text, Psalms 104, verse 1. And it says, He causes the grass to grow for the cattle and the herb for the service of men. Now, when we look at this, we all know what grass is, right? Cows go munch, 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 and cows eat the grass. But for the herbs, they are anything, and this, I guess, what's it called? Translation. Herb means anything that is green or anything that is living that we can use. It's an herb. It might be today we're going to talk about potatoes. It could be onions. For the service of men. So if you talk about something that's a service of men, what is service of men? Helps them, right? If it's a service, I'm going to provide a service for you, or you'll provide a service for me. So service means something that is going to help us. So God said that He is giving us the herb for the service of man. But so often we don't use them because we don't know about it is the reason. It's easier to pop a pill or, all those type of things. But the thing we need to remember is that healing comes from within. When we do a poultice on the outside of our body or a compress on the outside of the body, yes, it can help bring circulation and it can help enhance the healing process. But healing really comes from within us, inside. Depending on how much water we drink, the type of food we eat, are we eating a lot of vegetables, a little bit of fruit, or are we eating a lot of processed foods, sugar, dairy, meat, and those type of things? So the things that we're going to talk about today are there to help relieve the pain and relieve the inflammation. But the thing we need to remember is that it's all part of a package, okay? Because healing comes from within. Healing is also affected by our mind. Everybody knows that, right? If we're cranky, if we're crabby, if we're always critical of things, finding fault with everything, that's going to impede our healing. The healing process cannot take place if we have a very critical spirit. I've been a control freak my whole life, and so I've had to learn to step back on that and say, it's okay, and to kind of calm down a little bit, so to speak. Okay, so the first thing we're going to talk about is a compress versus a poultice, because there is a difference between a compress and a poultice. So a compress is usually a piece of cloth. It should be cotton or wool or linen. Should never be polyester. It really needs to be cotton. Or it could be even using paper towels work in certain instances, okay? But this is where you would take it and you would soak it in a solution. The easiest one that I can think of on that one that actually used the night that we arrived here at the Wellness Center. We'd been traveling for over a week and had a lot of things going on and hadn't been sleeping right. And you know how it is when you're traveling. Things had just got messed up. And when I arrived here, my throat was on fire. I told my husband, I said, oh, my throat, I really, really have a sore throat. And I was just afraid of what was going to happen the next day. If I've got a sore throat, then I can't be out with people because it's going to lead to something else. So what I did, something probably all of our grandmothers did, but lots of times we forget about, I got one of my husband's cloth cotton handkerchiefs, and I took the handkerchief and I brought it into the kitchen and I ran the water until it was cold, very cold. And then I went back to my room and actually I used the water in the restroom, in the bedroom. What am I saying? And I just got the cloth really wet, but not so that it was saturated so it's dripping, but it was really wet. Took and put it on my throat. Who wants to volunteer? It'll be easier if I have Barb. All righty. Bring your chair up here. If she doesn't mind being a volunteer here, it'll just be easier. Yeah, for now, let's put you this way so that everybody can see. All right. So very, very wet, cold water, wring it out gently. take it and put it right up on your throat. Now my throat was sore way up here, even at the top. It was sore, so I made mine a little bit longer. Can you hold this right here?
Sure.
All right, just for a second here. I should have brought this over. Then I had one of my husband's wool socks. See, it doesn't have to be anything fancy. He's got big feet. And I took it, and you must make sure that you cover everything. You have to cover all the plastic, make sure everything is covered. The plastic you don't have to put there. But the plastic is there to keep the moisture in more so. All right? So you'll want to feel around and just to make sure that everything is sealed underneath so that the moisture doesn't come out in the heel and get cold. And then I took a safety pin and I just pinned it on. Now, some people might ask, why are you putting cold rather than warm? Because if you go to put this on a child, I can tell you my kids and grandkids don't like it very much, but they do it. You want to put a cold because what it's going to do is it's going to cause the circulation, the blood to come, because the blood wants to do what? Warm it up, because right away it's made it cold right here. So what you're doing is you're increasing circulation to that area. So I put it on at night and left it on until the morning. And when you take it off in the morning, it is going to be very warm. This little compress inside here is very, very warm. But sore throat gone. The next day, I had no problem at all. I didn't even have to gargle with salt water or anything. It was gone. Now, I know of people who, when it's aching up here, which is more in your tonsil area, but even if you put it here, it's going to be okay. But I know people who have taken, I don't want to pinch your skin here, but they'll make it smaller. In the winter, this would work. Now, in the summer, people might look at you like you were crazy, perhaps. But then you can take, just for example, if this was a dress scarf, you can just put a scarf around it, and tie a little fancy a little doodad here or something, and just wear it during the day if your sore throat has not gone away. And nobody's going to know what you've got on there. Now, sometimes you might do an onion, chopped up onion, which we'll talk about for a poultice on there. We'll talk a little bit later. They might wonder about, what you're wearing or where that smell is coming from onion all day. But with this one, it's just one of the easiest ones really to do. For a sore throat, also for a cough, it works well, because if it's just that, that nagging cough that sometimes kids get, they're just whatever, you can put this on. It really works. Is that too tight, or did it feel comfortable?
It's fabulous.
It's okay, all right, because if I would have had the cold water, it doesn't take long for it to warm up. And that's what you have to assure, especially a child. Just try it, because it'll be, it warms up. And for a child, all right, just hang tight if you don't mind being a volunteer. All right. For a child, you might take something very cold, the cold cloth, and say, well, just try this, just try. And just come and just say, okay, that's cold, isn't it? And they'll be, yeah, it's cold, especially if they're not feeling well. But then just, is it still cold? And they'll be, no. I say, well, that is going to be the same way. With kids, you have to work with them. You can't just do an adult, okay, we're going to just put something cold on. An adult is, some adults aren't as easy as Barb. But just a child, work with them. Take it just a little bit and just show them. Say, see, it's just wet here on my hand. And then just take them and just, see, it warmed up really quick, and then that will work. Okay, so that's probably the easiest one for an example of a compress. Like I said again, it does need to be cotton or wool. We don't want to put synthetic, or it could be paper towels. Paper towels for this is not even going to work as well. But if all you have is some synthetic polyester, you'd be better off doing a wad of paper towel. But in your first aid kit, in your medical bag, which you're all going to start after you leave here, right? Just have a piece of cloth and some cling wrap. Put a little roll of cling wrap in there, because you'll be using it a lot for the compresses and poultices in there. Okay, so that's the first one. So that's a compress. It's when you have something that's wet. It might be an Epsom salt soak. There's a variety of things that you can do with compresses. A poultice now is when you're going to take a whole vegetable or whole product, which would be what we're going to do today is like a potato, might be onion, ginger, or it could be garlic, or just some. And oh, you know what? I forgot something else. So a castor oil can also be a compress, which we're going to talk about in just a little bit, okay? But that's the difference between a compress and a poultice. Compress is when something is actually, now what did I do with the sock? Or the handkerchief? Is when you actually have something and you get it wet. You are immersing it into something, or you are making a supersaturated solution like you would do with a castor oil. We might as well just do castor oil while we're here, actually. Castor oil has excellent anti-inflammatory. It's for pain. It can reduce lumps and bumps, tumors. My husband had in his left shoulder, it was so painful that he couldn't even do this. He couldn't do anything. And this is before we knew, we didn't even know about castor oil at that time, actually. Or we had just learned about it because it was hurting, and we had tried some of the other poultices, but he was not getting the relief. So then he went to the doctor, and they did an x-ray, they checked it out, and they told him, you have a spur, but not just a normal spur. They said, you have a giant. He had a huge, huge bone spur. So, which it was so painful that it was painful, just let me put it that way. So when he came home and he said it was a spur, he said, well, let's try the castor oil, because we had just learned about the castor oil just maybe a couple days before. So he took castor oil, and he took it on one of these great big huge Band-Aids, which still worked anyway. It was one of the great big ones, and he put it on there, and you put a supersaturated solution. What a supersaturated solution means is, and I'm going to use one of these incontinent chucks in the hospital. We call them chucks or tripads. You can buy them at CVS or Rite Aid or wherever. But I'm just going to show you quickly here. You can cut a piece off of this, or you could use some gauze, or you could use a piece of cloth. The point is you need to have what's called a supersaturated solution. To make a supersaturated solution on compress, rather, not the solution, would be you would take it and you would add some castor oil. Typically, you need to wait about 15-20 minutes until it doesn't absorb anymore, and you just keep adding and adding and adding. So we're going to just put a little bit on here, and we're going to just let this sit for a while. If you use one of these, you'll be able to see when it's coming through and it has soaked the back. You'll be able to tell. The reason I like to use the little good old chucks or tripads here is because it has a protective layer, it has the absorbable layer, it has a protective on the outside instead of all the saran wrap and everything else. But we're going to let that just set there for momentarily here. But he took and he put that on his shoulder right over top of the bone spur that he had. And in the next morning, he could move his arm. Can't say it was gone, but he could actually move his arm. But within 24 hours, it was gone. It was like, it's what it was, because I think that's what sold us, because we had never tried it until that time. Since then, we've tried it on a lot of things and had recommended to a lot of people to try it. It might be cancer, particular in a cancer in an area. Prostate cancer was a little bit more difficult, but we was talking with a friend of ours, a gentleman with prostate cancer, and just at least you can't make a compress easily. But for breast cancer, it might be, something on your skin. There could be bruises that you have, adhesions. You can even put it over top of the abdominal area if you have ovarian cysts over the ovaries here to help. It comes from the castor bean. So it's, again, cirrhosis of the liver, putting it over. And they say on stones. Now, I've not tried it on stones for gallstones on that myself. I've not recommended to anybody, but the research will say it. But this is a good example of an herb, which is the castor bean is what castor oil comes from, is a castor bean that it comes from. Okay? So we're this one here is almost soaked through, but we'll have to let it go for just a little bit longer. All right, so the next one then is a poultice. And the poultice, like we said, is when you grate something. And we're going to do some demonstration. We already talked about the heating compress, which is good for the sore throat. Okay, so potato poultice. Personally, I have used this one. I've used potato ginger on myself and garlic. Myself on my own body, but I've not used the onion yet. Potato is when you have you want inflammation, particularly in the muscle. I had myself doing some overstrenuous exercise, and I love to walk, and was doing improper posture while going up a hill, and I did it multiple times. And I was leaning over, and anyway, it messed up my back and also the lower part of my leg. So I had it hurt so bad, the inflammation right down in here below the knee. And I had to be out to a health clinic the next day. And a couple days later, and I had to do something. So I said, let me try the potato poultice. Your body knows what it needs. It knows what it needs. So first off, to be honest, I used ginger. All right, because I really didn't know for sure if it was in the joint, inflammation in my joint, or if it was really in the tissue. I didn't know. Your body will tell you. Listen to your body. So I grated the ginger, so we can actually do that one first here. So you would just take your ginger, and in my little first aid kit, everybody needs to have just a little tiny grater. But literally just grate it. It smells so good. Not to mention ginger tea tastes really good too. Okay. So again, your choice. Today we're going to pretty much stick to this just because it's what I have and it's a little bit easier. You can absolutely, there's no problem. You can put it on paper towel. You can take and put it in between gauze. Ginger you don't want to put directly on the skin. Ginger, onion, garlic. Onion some people can get away with, but ginger, onion, garlic, because it could burn. Potato you can put directly on the skin. But for the ginger, I just took on my leg, and Barb, I'll borrow your arm again, okay? And we want Barb to tell us. I'm just using this thin piece at the top here. All right? You can put a piece of cloth, which will be a little bit thicker. I grated a lot more ginger than we really needed. So, of course, you'd wanted a little bit of a bigger, I'm going to use this one again to hold it in place. So, Barb has some inflammation. We're going to pretend like this is on her, someplace on her, well, maybe just here on her arm. She banged it or something, and it's really painful. So we're just going to put that on. That hurt?
No, not at all.
No, good. All right.
Smells nice.
It sure does smell good. I tell you, ginger smells great, actually. And you wouldn't have to use saran wrap to put it on here now, but I'm going to, and I usually do, use some kind of saran wrap, Glad wrap, or whatever, just to hold it in place. Especially with potato, you must, because potato is really juicy. So just hold that there, and then you just get some tape just to secure it. So I put this on. All right. And you would want to secure it so it doesn't come up and down. All right.
Feels better already.
It feels better already. Look at that. That's a magic cure, right? A magic cure for an imagination wound. And tape it at the top, of course. You can also, if you're allergic to tape, as some people are, you can also buy the like bandage rolls. This is gauze that comes in a roll, and you can just wrap it around it. This can be reused again. Or a self-adhesive. This is more of an ace wrap here. But just don't do it tight. This is just to hold it in place. Now, when I first put it on, it felt like what?
It was a bit cool.
It was cool. How's it feeling now?
It's actually
It's going to warm up. Okay, and we're going to let her just have it here for a while and see how it feels. Now, when I had it on my leg, I put it on at night. And I put it down here, and I told my husband, I says, it's not hot. It's just not getting hot. But if I, lean over and put my leg on top of it, I could push it down. It would be hot. But by morning, it still wasn't hot. When you go in the shower in the morning and the cold water, the water hits it, you'll feel like, ooh, that is smarts a little bit. It will not burn your skin. It's going to make it hot, but it will not burn your skin. Now, I didn't put a thick layer underneath it here, so it's going to get warm pretty quick. But when you start feeling it going, this is warm, just interrupt me, okay? All right, so it's a little bit warm. But that's how you would make one with ginger. Now, it's for joint inflammation and pain, okay? So like I said, for myself, I didn't know if it was a joint or if it was tissue. That was my problem. So we've got it on a place where there's no joint here, obviously, but anyway, this is for demonstration purposes. So by the morning, I just said, this is not, my body was telling me this is not the right one. It wasn't hot, it just didn't feel, so I said, okay, let me just forget that one then. So I said, well, now we'll pull this arm up so we'll have this one ready, all right? I said, well, let me try the potato, because I had just a couple days before I had to be to that, the all-day medical clinic, and I had to be able to get up and walk. Yep. So just a potato. We usually have red potatoes. This is a white potato, but it's the same principle. Just grate the potato. The difference with the potato now and the ginger or garlic is potato, and depending on the area also depends on how much potato you want. More is not always better, as we have learned before. But for me in this one, I'm just going to put it on. So I took and I put it on. I took another compress, knowing that potato is juicy and it will stain your sheets if you get it on your linen at night. Okay? So if you're using it at night, you're going to have to be a lot more cautious. Because if you're laying if you don't wrap it really good, it will stain your sheets, and then it's hard to get it out. So potato, you can put directly on the skin. Don't have to. I actually chose to just put it directly on there. But for this, we'll just go ahead and we'll put it underneath here again. Just raw potato. And there's lots of uses for raw potatoes, actually. But because this one does stain, you will have to be careful. So whenever I'm using potato, I should contact Glad Company and tell them I need a commission for, I was talking about.
I have a question.
Sure.
Would it be permissible to just slice the potato lengthwise, or is grating better?
Grating for this one. Now, her question was, can you just slice the potato? Is grating better? For a poultice, you need to grate it, all right? Because we need to get the juices going really good and get it going, okay? Sliced potatoes, you can use, like if you have an insect bite, put your lemon on it and whatever, but if it should get infected or something like that, you can put slices of whole potato on that, okay? So because this is a potato poultice here, we are going to wrap it. Some people are like, oh, why are you putting all that plastic right on your skin? Well, sometimes you got to do what you got to do. And okay, so then taking again and putting, your tape around it. And if I was going to sleep with this myself personally, I would tape it around it, and then I would take another larger piece of the Chuck's wrap here, and I would put it around. So that's what I did. For during the day on my leg, I took and I put the potato during the day. That night, I took and I did another one at night. And within 24 hours, I could actually walk normal. And by the next day, then I was, when I went to the health clinic, when I stood up, I could still feel it by the end of the day. But by the third day, it was totally gone, the inflammation was. How is the ginger feeling?
It is tingling a bit?
It's a little bit warmer now.
More.
It's definitely warm. This one, potato will not, it's not going to tingle at all or get hot, okay? So I like the potato. Works great for tissue inflammation and for muscle aches for that particular poultice. Okay, then the other one is, we talked about potato slices. This is where you would just take, if you have an insect bite, scratch, or something that has become infected, you can take a slice of potato, just the whole slice itself, and place it on and cover it up, and that will help. And you can leave it on for 12 hours or 24 hours. You probably 12 hours, and you take it off and refresh it. And by the way, with these also, I should say, when I went to the medical clinic that we went to, the health clinic, I put it on in the morning, and we were gone. I was gone all day, and I got home that night, and I took it off, and I showed my husband, and he says, wow, we could make hash browns with that, because it had really dried out already. It had started drying out. But you can take and just refresh, leave it on for 12 hours. And if you're not sure, is this muscle, is it tissue, is it infection, what is going on inside there? Your body will tell you. Listen to your body. Try potato. If that doesn't help, if you're like, this is not the right one, give it some time. Then try the ginger. If that's not, it doesn't just do anything, then try some garlic on it. But there's a few, ginger, it's mainly ginger and potato are the two. So,
Suppose you combine them, just hedging your bets.
okay, good question. The question was, supposing you combine them, just hedging your bets on that one. Not a good idea. Because it's not a good idea. More is not always better, okay? Right. We're going to take this one off because this is in a sensitive area of your skin and it's not a joint. And so we're going to take this off, and you're going to be able to see, okay, when you look at your arm right now, that's just from the gauze pad there. You can see that there's no redness right on there. By morning there would have been some, but it definitely is warm to the touch. So the circulation definitely has definitely improved on that one. Now it can be a little bit tricky if it's on a joint itself to make it stick, but that's the advantage of the type of material that you're using. You can just apply it pretty easy. Okay, so then let's see. We did the ginger and we've done the potato. Next one then, let's do an onion. The Miracle Onion. Onion works great. If you have a little child, an infant, a baby, who is really congested, well, let me ask you guys. I'm going to cut this onion, but if I start cutting the onion up here, what's going to happen to me? My eyes will start to tear up probably, so we're not going to cut that much, okay? And if your eyes start to tear up, usually what else happens? Your nose will start running. So if you have a baby, because you don't want to put any of these on a baby directly, for sure, except the onion you can put on the feet, which we'll talk about. But you're not going to get them to allow you to put an onion compress on their chest. But you take and cut some onion slices and just stick them on a dish and stick it in their room next to their bed or where they're at. Or if you're holding them, I see several people nodding their head. It really will help to open it up. Of course, there's the lemon inhalation that works with them too. But for the onion, you can take onion directly. Okay, so take some onion and just chop it up. That just gets the juices going. That's the purpose behind that. But if somebody has a cough, a bad cough, you can take this onion and, again, I'm just going to use my good old easy chucks here. Maybe I won't. Maybe we'll do a gauze on this one. So we'll take some gauze, and we're just going to take some chopped up onion here. My granddaughter says this is squishy. and take another gauze on top. And right now that feels pretty dry. And on their feet, now if you would take a piece of the chucks, like you could cut it a little bit longer, almost to the shape more of the inside of the foot. So you would take this, now we're going to pretend that this is Barb's foot, okay? So this is pretend, because we don't have her foot up here. So if this was the bottom, the sole of her foot, okay, like this, so this is her foot. So you would just take your onion, and you're going to put it on there. You will tape it on, secure, put the little sock on the child, or yourself, put the sock on, and send them off to bed. Or let them run around the house. Put their shoes on them and let them go. What that's going to do is to stimulate the circulation down here. Remember, the point of everything is to increase circulation. We're being taught here what? Drink what? Water. Water, 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 water. Juice, juice, juice. Vegetable, greens, greens, greens. Everything to increase our circulation. Hydrogen water. You know, increasing the circulation. It's really important. So when you're increasing the circulation, that's taking away the bad toxins, but it's increasing the circulation. And onion on the bottom of the feet can help a cough. Now, an onion poultice, now you would make it bigger than this for an onion poultice. You wouldn't have just a small one like this, but take and put it on your chest. Applying it directly onto the chest. The onion, you know, inside a, you know, just right on here. And again, making it big enough to cover. It's going to get warm, but it's not going to get hot. Now, the smell of the onion obviously is going to help open up the olfactory, so you're going to smell better and ease. But this will actually ease the congestion, and it will help with the cough. All right? You can also make a cough syrup out of onion, which is what we do. We want to concentrate and focus here on, you know, healing coming from within. And if somebody's coughing, increasing the water and having them inhale. But you can take onion with a small amount of honey, just slicing the onion, putting it in a jar, letting it set 24 hours, and the juice that comes from that, you can just take as for a cough syrup, and that also works well. So the onion poultice works really good for adults as well as children on the bottom of the feet, on the chest. If somebody has cold feet, always has cold feet, they need to increase the circulation, take and put an onion poultice on the bottom. Or cayenne pepper. Take cayenne pepper, which I don't have here, and take cayenne pepper and wet. You can either use castor oil to wet it, or I usually use castor oil actually. So, and then just take and put cayenne pepper directly on that. A good amount, good half teaspoon on there, and just put it to the bottom of the feet and let it sit overnight. Then increase the circulation. No, it will not burn you. Okay? Cayenne pepper is actually an herb from the capsicum family. All right? Let's see. What else do we have here? We can do garlic. Same principle. Same. We don't need to even cut open the garlic. Garlic is going to be the same principle. You can use garlic for cough, for colds. Garlic, you know, eating garlic is very good for us, as we know. But externally, I think the ones that are used the most are the ginger, the potato, and the onions. Now, the castor oil compress. So this has been, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes or whatever, but you can see how it's starting to come through. You can see the little spot there, right? Okay. So, but on the top here, even though I can see it coming through, it's not, let me use the word gooey on the top here. So although it has soaked all the way through, which is very important, because if it doesn't go all the way through, it's just going to dry and come off. It'll just eventually be absorbed and it's not there anymore. So that's why you have to put enough so that is all the way through, plus, that was a lot more than I needed to put on. But you'll need to put some more on the top of it. So this is a lot more than I need. So Barb, I'm not going to put this on you, or this is going to make a greasy mess on you. But if you have pains on your, might be your shoulder or your knee, if you have a spur, there's so many things that you can do with castor oil, with cancer, the castor oil poultice. The trick is with that is it has to be moist, it has to stay moist, and it has to stay in contact. I changed my mind. So it has to stay in contact. All right? So that's why, just if you're just applying it, that's going to help. But if you really want it to do something good, you need to put it on there because it's greasy there, but it's still, if you have a saturated, compress here, you can't get any more on there. It's just not going to absorb anymore. And it's not going to go anywhere. Okay? Just tape it on and leave it. Change it every 12 hours. Now, science is going to tell you that you can actually, after 12 hours, you're like, I need to refresh this. For like 3 days, 2 or 3 days, you can actually take this off, put some more castor oil on it, put the same thing back on. Somehow, that just doesn't seem right to me. I don't know. But you can do that. Just keep refreshing it up there for a couple of days. But if you have lumps, bumps, bruises, cancer, works great. In this class, we're not talking about castor oil internally. Inevitably, somebody says, well, I tried it internally, I drank it, and it's going to give you diarrhea like crazy. This is not about this. This is outside the body, okay? So you can just, but again, making sure that you secure it snugly, put it on there so it's not going to move around. You can use one of these. You can use, you can use tape. You can use more that cling wrap. This would be way too big for this to secure it on, but you'd have to cut it and have several pieces. In my first aid kit, my medical kit, I have various different sizes. The other one then would be hot and cold. If somebody has a sprain, ankle or joint or something, or even of the muscle or something that is sprained, or for healing, if there's infection even, let me talk about if there's an infection. So if somebody comes and you have an infection in their hand, or maybe their foot, they've been infected, we do what's called hot and cold. Probably all our mothers had us put our foot in hot water, maybe some Epsom salt in there, or just plain hot water, and then forgot about the cold. But when you think about the body, if you put something in hot water or you put hot on it, what does the hot do? Dilates. So what would the cold do? Constrict. So the rule is 3 to 30. So if Barb had a infected finger, really infected, pussy, oozy, really kind of nasty looking and very painful. So she would come, or you would tell her, well, you need to put it in hot water for 3 minutes and then 30 seconds in cold water. You don't want to put it longer than 30 seconds because if the finger or the body part gets used to the temperature, the infection can go back in, okay? It'll prevent it. So it's 3 minutes to 30 seconds. Now, if her finger is all inflamed and swollen and it's pussy and it's really painful, and if she sticks it in hot water, what's she going to do? Exactly. She's going to scream. And if it's a child, are they even going to be willing to try it? Well, no, I'm not either. Even as an adult, I'm not going to. So what you would do is you take the water and have them try with their other hand first. And just kind of feel it. And say, well, how does that feel? It's hot. Oh, it's hot. Yeah, okay. Add a little bit of cool water to it. A little bit of cool water. Okay, so then try this hand, not the owie finger.
Bad.
Yeah, not the owie finger.
Oh,
Let's keep the owie finger out. And then we try the other fingers. That doesn't hurt, does it?
Not at all.
No, it's feeling pretty good. So now the finger that has the owie on it, you can say, can we just try that? Will you just let me try it just a little bit and see, because it's hurting so bad now. This might help. Okay, so then just gently put it in. You may have to take it out right away because it might hurt, but work through it. Make sure you always check the water first. You must always check the water first. Use your elbow, use the back of your hand. And when you're telling them to put it in, don't say, just put your hand in there. You don't want to do that either. Take your hand, guide their hand. Even if it's a finger, if it's a foot, it doesn't matter what it is. Take your hand, and hold that. Take your hand and say, okay, let's go in. Because whose hand is going in with theirs?
Yours.
Yours, and that's comforting. You have somebody there, whether it's young or old. Just take your hand and just gently put it in there. And then you would time it and go and talk with them. And explain what is happening. The heat now is expanding, or it's causing the vessels to expand. It's taking all those nasty things out of there. And then after 3 minutes, you'll have your ice cold water, and then you're going to go, pshh. Let's count to 30. Then you'll count to 30. 30 seconds here. Say, oh, that's cold. Let's go back in here and get it warm. So for kids, just make it fun. Just make it fun. But what you don't want to do with adults, but especially with children, is just go and say, okay, now put your hand or put your foot in here, because that's going to be too much of a shock for them and they're already in pain. But hot and cold works. Definitely you can put some Epsom salt in there. That also works, but even just plain water, if you don't have the Epsom salt, that will also work. So I think those are the main ones that we were going to talk about today. The difference between a compress and a poultice, a heating compress for the sore throat. If you get a sore throat, if you're starting to cough, I think I mentioned that too. If you've got a tickle in your throat and you're just coughing and coughing, you can make one of these so easy. Cotton, ice cold water, cover it with a wool sock. And I actually have the mate to this wool sock in my medicine thing at home. And just put it around their neck. I always put saran wrap next to it, just so that it keeps it in. And just put it like that. Probably one of the most common that you would want to try or use. So are there any other questions? If not, we can have questions afterwards. Yes?
So for the hot and cold, says here along with the potato for inflammation, what are the logistics of that?
Good question, yes. So on the handout I gave you, I put down to use it along with the potato, all right? Because the hot and cold, it can be for an infection like this, but if somebody has a sprained foot or sprained muscle or it's hurting, often we will do hot and cold. Often we'll do hot and cold, hot and then cold. If it's a fresh sprain, that's something different because then you want to do cold, okay? There's difference. But what you would do is you would try the hot and cold, and then you can put the potato poultice on it afterwards, okay? Good question. Okay, other than that, thank you much. All right, we're going to give a demonstration of a castor oil compress, actually, and how to put it on. And you're having pain. Where exactly?
Right here.
Right there. All righty. All right. Oh, well, he's got pain right there. You've got a nice little lumpy there, huh?
Yeah.
Nice little lump there. Okay. So to make a castor oil poultice, and the reason you want to find out exactly where the pain is at is because if somebody's having pain right here, and what I didn't ask is, does it radiate anywhere? Is it going anywhere else, or do you feel it way down your arm?
It stays there, but when I move it, sometimes it's fine.
It'll go down, but otherwise it's mainly right here in the joint, okay? Now, if it was here but coming way down and it was hurting in this joint here, I would put a compress all the way down here and then tape it on. I would just do it all the way down, okay? But being yours is right here, we're just going to focus mainly on this area. So you would want to get at a pharmacy, CVS, Rite Aid, Walgreens, or whatever, you can buy something like this. That we use them in the hospital for incontinent pads. They work very well. I like them just because it has the plastic in the back and it has a cloth there. You can also use gauze, which works just as well. And maybe we'll go ahead and we'll just use the gauze for right now. So what you would do is you would take castor oil, just pure castor oil, and you can buy it again, CVS, Rite Aid, or wherever you want to get the castor oil. And you need to put a good amount on it. And you have to make what's called a saturated solution. Saturated enough on here so that, or saturated compress, so that it actually goes through and nothing else, it just won't absorb anymore. That's why I like using these, but it would be something extra that you would have to purchase, and they're not expensive, but they're not necessarily so cheap either. But they're just convenient, and maybe I'll just show you the difference between the two. But you add it, and technically you should let it set for 10, 15, whatever minutes, just to make sure that it is all the way soaked in. It's important to have it soak in. That's the one thing I think I can't stress enough, that it has to be soaked in so that it's a constant supply of it. I know somebody who had it, a saturated, a compress on it here, but then was just rubbing it in, and the pain, it didn't help, and the pain came back. Because remember, healing comes from within, but this helps to relieve the pain and the discomfort from the outside. So you can see how it's soaking in there, but it's just barely coming through on this one. And depending on how thick of a cloth you have, if I was using this cloth, which is cotton, and you would only want to use cotton or one of these, do not use polyester, because we don't want to get the chemicals not from polyester going into our bodies. You can actually see where your the pain is from, because it's a little bit elevated here, a little bit of swelling there, or I don't know if it's a spur or what it is right in here. But it's also red. Could also be red from me pushing around on it. Could be. So you see when I've put it on that there's quite a bit coming out. I'm going to actually take this one. I hope I made it big enough here. And I'm just going to add just a little bit more. In this case, more is better. The more you can get, the better it is. And put it right over top of that. Okay? Then, you don't need the cling wrap if you've used this, the blue tripod or the chuck here, because that already has it on it. If you're just using the gauze, you would need to put something else over top of it. Not only just to hold it in place, but you don't want to get the oil all over your clothes. So because I have a little bit of the gauze showing out there, we're going to go ahead and put some of the cling wrap on there, because I don't want to get the castor oil all over his clothes. I think my cutter's not cutting well anymore. Okay. So we're going to just we're going to put this right here, and I will just cut this off. Not your arm.
Thank you.
Thank you. And not your shirt. Your wife will say thank you to that, right?
She's very grateful.
Yeah. And you notice the scissors. I'm safe doing this on here because of the type of scissors that I'm using. You couldn't just use normal scissors. Okay? And then we're going to tape it on. Secure it in place. If I hadn't seen this work with my husband's spur, I was very pleased. This is what we call Duraport's paper tape, but you can get whatever tape. Some people are allergic to tape, and there's a variety of tapes. I do not recommend like regular, just plain old adhesive tape that you can buy, because most everybody, you will get a reaction to that one. This one you're not supposed to get a reaction from. Well, I can't say that it's not going to stick to hair, but
It's okay.
It's not as painful. Let me put it that way. And for some reason, this tape is not sticking very well. Did you put lotion on your skin? Or did you rub castor oil already on your skin?
Yes.
That's why. The tape is not sticking very well. That's why I'm like, why is this not sticking? So we should have already, wiped it off with some alcohol or something and just to get all the oil off. So we'll have to do some of that. But then I would take over here, just so that it's going to stick down, put it over, and because you want it to touch the part. I am so sorry, and I just was pushing right away on it, touching the part. So making sure that you push it and you secure it. All right? And then he can just put his shirt on and go about his day. We'll have to get some different tape on yours, though. Go about the day. Again, replace it. If it gets loose or comes off, put a new one on. 24 hours, 12 hours later recommended, take it off and replace it with something else. So that's a castor oil compress. It's really very easy to do. It's inexpensive, and it really works great. Okay, thanks. Woohoo! Thank you.
Yeah, I got a question.
Yes.
For the arthritis,
Mhm.
there is no negative operation in here.
Mm-hmm.
What they do is they remove the little bone over here.